Hello and welcome to Mike Ness Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Pashota. Happy Tuesday to you. And it was a happy Monday for Mets fans who tuned in last night to watch the Mets absolutely blow out the Houston Astros, the defending world champion Houston Astros. They would win that game 11-1. Mets would tack on the final 5 runs of that win in the ninth inning, so they were comfortably leading 6-1 for most of this game, and really there was no challenge by the Astros at any really given point during this performance. Max Scherzer absolutely blew out everybody, and when I say blew out, I mean he exceeded all expectations in the start, and the expectation for much of the season with Scherzer has been just don't completely blow it for us. Don't do anything where you're going to be giving up 5 runs and we have to take you out in like the third inning and anything like that. Basically what we saw from Carlos Carrasco the last time he pitched. We don't want to see that. We want to see good Max Scherzer, a novel idea. Good Max Scherzer showed up, and he showed up in a big way. His best start of the season. He would go 8 innings, allowing only 4 hits, 1 earned run, while striking out 8 batters, only allowed 1 walk. Just a terrific performance all across the board from Scherzer, including only throwing 91 pitches in this game. I had to look at that again and said, he threw only 91 pitches? Is that possible in 8 innings in this day and age? For this team, a team that was early in the year, I mean, like, just throwing 90 pitches just to get through like 4 innings. But he really bounced back. Terrific performance from him. Lowered his ERA back down to 4.04. His ERA had been staying in the high 4s for most of the season. But a great bounce back performance from him. The Met offense also came through in multiple situations, mostly in the third inning, where the Mets would hit 2 home runs, the first coming off of the bat of Daniel Vogelbach. Vogelbach's second home run in just a few games. And great to see from Vogelbach. I'm glad that he is starting to swing that bat with a little bit more authority. He seems to have made a slight change in his approach at the plate. Looks like he's looking for more of an uppercut swing now, which kind of leads into what he is probably best at. I think the level swing that he was working with for much of the season was, I think, to lessen mistakes. He had more of a chance of putting the ball in play, but he wasn't really doing anything for the team with that approach. I think his all or nothing kind of uppercut that he's been working with, and that's led to him homering twice in the last few games, is more useful for them. I think he definitely got that inning started, and then the Mets would just kind of take it from there. And later on, would see Starling Marte hit an RBI single that would score Brett Beatty. And then with Marte and Francisco Alvarez on base, Francisco Lindor steps up, and Lindor hits a 3-run home run that traveled a mile in the air. Ultimately, did not go very far. It only landed in like the first couple of rows of the outfield, but it was quite a shot. I love camera work by when the Mets are not in Citi Field, and they made this look like, based on like the trajectory, I guess, that it looked like it was going to land. They made it look like it was going to end up in like the scoreboard, and it landed. It was a high arcing shot that just ultimately landed in the first few rows of the stands. But it was pretty funny, but quite a shot. 3-run home run, big shot for Lindor. Lindor starting to get that monkey off his back after such an ugly start to the season. I'm glad that he's starting to hit with more authority. And honestly, what can be said about Lindor's season is that it can't be said that he has not been hitting home runs. It cannot be said that he hasn't been driving in runs. His home run today was his 14th. He would finish the game with 5 RBIs, bringing his RBI total up to 50. Again, we're not even in July yet, so he's looking at another season where he's going to be hitting probably somewhere in between 20 to 25 home runs, maybe driving in 100 RBIs this season. Great job from Lindor. He just hasn't been getting his just hasn't been hitting very consistently, and because of that, his batting average has been dwindling lower and lower. The He would go 2 for 5 in this game. That would raise his average up to 216 on the year, and the home run would help him with his slugging percentage, I guess, and that kind of drives up his OPS. But I mean, he has an on-base percentage of under 300. It's been really rough to watch with Lindor. He's not getting on base in any real way, and because of that, it's really hurting his numbers. And this is mostly his batting line. His home run RBI numbers look great. It's just he's not been getting. Not been hitting nearly consistent enough for a guy who's supposed to be their 3-hitter, and it's been a problem. But he came through big in this game, and thankfully it wasn't just him. It was a lot of other Mets on the team, with the exception of Brandon Nimmo, who went 0 for 5 in this game. Everyone else would get a base hit, at least one. So Marte would go 2 for 5, Alonso 1 for 4, Tommy Pham 2 for 4. Jeff McNeil 2 for 5, Vogelback 2 for 5, and Brett Beatty 2 for 5, and then Francisco Alvarez would get a base hit in there as well. So was a great job by everybody. Doubles for Alonso and Pham, and RBI double that drove in 2 batters, and then top of 9 for Lindor. Pham would also get an RBI single in the 9th, and then Vogelback would finish it off with a 2-run single in the 9th that gave him on the day 3 RBIs. So it was, I mean, as I mentioned before at the beginning, the Mets tacked on the last 5 runs in garbage time. They had this game sewn up by that point, and the Astros were not going to recover. This was really the last thing I was expecting. After struggling to beat the St. Louis Cardinals, the Mets come back and just blow out the Houston Astros. And admittedly, this was a game where the Astros were not throwing, let's say, their best pitcher. So it was going to be Scherzer taking on Hunter Brown. And Hunter Brown has had a pretty decent job, done a pretty decent job for them this year. But this was not, their ace pitcher on the mound. It was going to be a situation where Mets were going to be throwing Max Scherzer against Hunter Brown, and Scherzer, as inconsistent as he's been this year, the advantage would seem to have lied with Brown. However, the Mets kind of threw all expectations out the road, and that huge 3rd inning really sparking it for them. So great job for them there. And then also it has to be mentioned just because he had the 2-run home run on Sunday as well on Father's Day. Tommy Pham has been coming through more and more. He's having an incredible June. It's really remarkable. I don't think anybody could have anticipated that Tommy Pham would be such an integral part of this team's offense right now. But he is absolutely necessary to be in there, and he probably could stand to be starting more than Mark Hanna at this point. I think Hanna hasn't been particularly useful for the team this year in terms of just being a home run RBI guy. Tommy Pham's been coming through more and more. Pham's up to 7 home runs, 28 RBIs on the season. He's looked, all in all, pretty spectacular. I don't really know how to put it. He's been an integral part of that in the middle of that lineup. And again, Tommy Pham, more of a journeyman at this point than what can be considered a star player. They brought him in really to be a 4th outfielder, and there were times that during the season where it looked like Tommy Pham could probably be pushed off of the team and maybe traded away or even DFA'd, depending on how the Mets wanted to work it. But going into the first 2 months of the season, I mean, he had 3 home runs, 14 RBIs. This is through April and May. He had nothing really going for him in this game. In the month of June alone, he has 4 home runs, 14 RBIs. He's batting .327. He has a 10-40 OPS. I mean, that's insane. I mean, he is absolutely integral to that lineup right now. You cannot take him out. If you have a left-hand batter on the mound, leave him in there. Don't put Mark Hanna in. And I think Showalter likes to go back to Canha. Canha's just been largely a disappointing player, and I just don't really. He's not terrible. I think Canha comes up big in certain situations. I think he's a good teammate. I think he's a good piece of that of the puzzle. I don't know if he's a starting caliber player. It's just the way he's kind of played during his Met career. He's just kind of been fine, nothing really to write home about, and I can't really say anything more than that. He's just been perfectly average. Tommy Pham, another guy I wouldn't really necessarily characterize as a great player, but and probably will dwindle more towards average. But at the moment, he is red hot. You got to keep him in that lineup as much as possible because he's really sparking things for them. And then the Pete Alonso situation right now. Alonso came back. He probably came back a little bit too early from the injury because he looked really rough on Sunday. Today, not much better. I know I said again, he got the double in this game. But largely he's looked a little bit slow on the trigger in terms of his batting approach. And it's just the things that go with the kind of injury that Alonso was dealing with, sprained wrists. You're not really supposed to, actually swing the bat that much. And because of that, I think he returned probably a little bit earlier than was anticipated. And because of that also is the reason why he doesn't really look like the Pete Alonso that we've been seeing all season. He just doesn't look very secure at the plate. And I like the double. That was great. We'll see if he can continue his hitting approach and get back to hitting home runs. And how quickly that's going to be. Because, again, his wrists, not the most important thing, but obviously a critical part of him actually hitting the ball. So his approach is definitely going to be affected by how he plays. How he swings the bat. I think it's going to take him a little while for him to resurrect the power. We'll see if he can maybe hit a home run in the series. If not, debatable when exactly he's going to hit a home run. He's going to be going to Philadelphia after the series in Houston, so good chance that he could possibly hit one in the next few games. But it is great to see Alonso back in the lineup for nothing else other than he really does lengthen the lineup. He's a guy that opposing pitchers have to be a little bit more concerned about and secure about, and reminds of, we got Pete Alonso in there. We can't leave anything out there. We can't get runners on base just in case. So important piece there. And then Starling Marte, very slowly, has been sort of getting himself out of the hole that he's dug. And there's no mistaking anything that Marte's had a terrible season. This is probably the worst year of his career, and that's by like any statistical measure you could say that. He is having a horrendous season, offensively and defensively. Defensively, he's looked he's really been struggling in right field, to the point that I would almost say like they need to look into acquiring a new right fielder, maybe more DH time. Something I never would have anticipated me saying in 2022, but in 2023 he has looked pretty rough. There's really nothing to say about that. But as I said, he's very slowly been starting to dig himself out of the hole. So for the month of June, he's batting 295. Still not hitting it for any power, really, and that's been troubling to see, because I think Marte does have excellent power when he's right. At the moment, he has not been right, and he's been mostly focusing on getting base hits, and that's helped him with the average. As I said, he's batting 295 in the month, and it's been helping that in that regard, but he just is not hitting with the ball with any real authority, and at the moment, he's just trying to focus on being a top of the lineup hitter and getting himself on base in any way he can. If that includes singles and walks, he's going to try and do that. But that's been his approach this season. Him and Nimmo theoretically should be a very potent top of the lineup duo, but because Marte hasn't really been holding up his end of the bat here, it's been mostly left at Nimmo, and Nimmo's been playing above expectations for much of the year. He does need help. I think the 0-for-5 game in this one was pretty ugly to watch, and he didn't look very secure in anything that he was doing in that sense. So hard to watch that 0-for-5 from Nimmo, but I was glad to see the 2-for-4 from Marte. And these little improvements are helpful to watch for them. And then One last thing on the Mets, mainly Max Scherzer. And Scherzer, there's been an eye. We just talked about Marte's best. Marte's having the worst season of his career. Max Scherzer is in the middle of the worst season of his career. And the common theme here is that these are two veterans that are probably nearing the end of their careers. So it's a little bit more understandable that as they age, they're going to be getting worse and worse. That's just the way of baseball and the way of all sports. But they can't just fall off a cliff. There has to be like a gradual decline. Now, this happens with some other players. We've seen guys like Miguel Cabrera just all of a sudden lose it. You can win a Triple Crown, and then 3 years later, you're an absolute pariah to your team. Like, you can't hit it at all. So there's really no sense as to where exactly the Mets think they are with Scherzer. I think Scherzer can occasionally throw these gems, and again, no one was really expecting him to come out and just dominate like this. This was really out of like nowhere, considering his last few performances. Most people anticipated he might go 6 innings, might allow 3 runs, maybe strike out 5, whatever the situation might be. He hasn't been pitching with any type of velocity this season, and if his off-speed stuff hasn't been working, it's left him really exposed on the mound. So because of that, we were going into this game, and admittedly, the Astros are weakened right now. They don't have Yordan Alvarez in the middle of their lineup. That's their big guy, so that does help things. But this is still the defending world champions, and even though they've been somewhat disappointing in terms of their season this year, I think most people are surprised that they have not taken over first place, and the Rangers are kind of walking away with that division so far. There is a little bit of a shock value going on. Now, the Astros are on a losing stretch right now. They've also lost 5 in a row, including the game yesterday. So the Mets are trying to take advantage as much as they can, and this has been an ongoing theme with the Mets, is that they have situations where they can potentially take advantage of a weakened opponent, and they often come up short. They, for whatever reason, can't keep the momentum going, and call it problems with the lineup, call it problems with the pitching staff. I liken it more to the fact that they can't seem to focus on any kind of real lineup configuration, and Joe Walter could probably stand to stop tinkering around so much. That's just my opinion. I think for the most part they've just kind of been dealt a unusual hand by the pitching staff. Sorry, not the pitching staff. Sorry, with the rule changes that they've been dealing with, and then everything else that they've had to kind of also deal with, the injuries, and I think what can be also said, this is just a team of veterans, and veteran players can be helpful. They can also be a detriment if they have kind of reached the end of their line, and we might have seen guys like Marte and Canha and Scherzer, Verlander, they're kind of reaching the ends of their useful portion of their career, and it's sort of the risky thing when you sign players like these, that you don't know what exactly you might get from year 1 to year 2, and the result of this has all been the Mets have struggling to stay and keep their heads above 500. The win that brought them to 34 and 38 on this season, nowhere near what the Mets were anticipating when they would be reaching June 20th, that their team would be 4 games under 500. But there is at least some cause for excitement. The Mets were going to be treated to a excellent pitching matchup this coming up, which is going to be Justin Verlander taking on Framber Valdez, and that's a pitching matchup and a half. That's the Astros' 2 best pitchers last season squaring off now, and Valdez has been excellent for the Astros. Verlander, so middling. It's been a little disappointing, to say the least, for what people were anticipating when the Mets signed Verlander. He hasn't been able to kind of deliver those big performances for the most part. We've seen flashes, but when they really need a big performance from Verlander to kind of keep up the momentum, and then the lineup to do what they did yesterday. Maybe not blow them out, but they need to come up in situations with runners on scoring base, in scoring position. That's really the only thing that can be said about this team, is that when they're dealt a favorable situation, they need to take advantage of it. And let's say we are not going to be dealing with a super favorable situation in this game. It's a one thing to take on Hunter Brown, it's another thing to take on Framber Valdez. You can't anticipate that you're going to score 6 runs off of Valdez. So every situation where the Mets have where they can kind of tack on a run or do anything, they have to do it. There has to be a sense of urgency with this lineup, and a sense that if we can take 2 out of 3 from the Astros, it's going to look really good, particularly against 2 of their best pitchers. So great things to watch, and it was a great game last night. I'm excited to see if they can keep it going. The history tells us that probably not, but we'll see if the Mets can kind of turn the worm here and get themselves back on track and focus on winning this series and potentially taking 2 out of 3, maybe even 3 out of 3 from the Houston Astros.
Thank you for listening to Mike Smith's podcast. Please be sure to follow us on Spotify and subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Finally, please also follow the podcast Twitter, which is Mike Smith's Pod, all one word. Appreciate your time and have a wonderful rest of your day or evening. Let's go, Mets.